in here is the brand new Samyang 45mm f1.8 lens. It's a brand new lens for Sony E mount cameras. I've been shooting for the last couple of days on an A7 III, using this lens for landscape, portrait, all kinds of stuff. Let's talk about how it performs. So let's talk a little bit about the Samyang 45mm. It's a new autofocus lens, like I say, for Sony E mount cameras. So I was using it on the front of the A7 III. You could use it on the front of APS-C cameras as well, so something like the A6400 if you want to do. And it's an interesting focal length. 45mm it's a little bit different. Obviously, it's a little bit wider than 50mm. It's actually a little bit closer to the perspective of the human eye, the 50mm is. Personally, I really like shooting it around sort of 40 or 45. I shoot a lot of video around that kind of focal length. I just like that it is a little bit wider than 50, but obviously it's a bit tighter than 35 as well. So for me, it's a really interesting one to shoot at. Now, this lens is particularly interesting because it's coming in at a really reasonable price. At the time of recording this, it's £349, but I'll put a link down to the full product, the description, the spec, the price, everything down in the description. But £349 means that it's coming in against things like the Sony 50mm 1.8 and things like that, whereas this is actually a really well-made lens and the image quality is actually really, really nice. So speaking of which, let's talk about that image quality for a second. So I shot a lot of portraits, a bit of landscape, a lot of low light, sunset kind of stuff, a little bit of my dog as well to test out the animal eye autofocus and in the trees, in the forest, that sort of thing. I was actually really impressed by how well it was able to cope with all the different stuff. 45mm is kind of a good all-rounder kind of focal length, but actually this lens coped with everything that I was throwing at it, which is really, really good. Now, in terms of sharpness, I like to shoot wide open f1.8 to see kind of how it handles its sharpness when it is wide open like that, especially for a large aperture lens like this. Happy to say, certainly in the center of the frame at 1.8, it was nice and sharp. The portraits were looking great, and stopping down to 2.8 just gave me a little bit of extra sharpness, and especially right out towards the edges. Now, stopping down further than that, f4, f8, f11, it just looked even better, and for landscapes, f11 and f8 looked great. But that large aperture, shooting at f1.8, also gives you some other stuff. So obviously it's better for low lights, letting in more light. So shooting sunset, shooting under the trees where there wasn't as much light, really helped out a lot. But it also gives you that nice shallow depth of field. It gives you that bokeh. And I'm super happy to say that the bokeh on this looked really, really good. It was nice and smooth. I wasn't getting artifacts. It wasn't kind of giving me weird lines. There's a little bit of outline around some objects, but even on the kind of messier backgrounds, it actually performed really well. Now, this is also a great focal length for video. I really like shooting kind of 40, 45, because a lot of people will shoot video at 35 or something like that. I like to just go in a little bit tighter, especially if you're shooting with the large aperture and getting that kind of blurred background. I just really like the look of it. I love shooting with primes as well. And because of the size of this lens and the weight of it is 160 grams, it was really easy to mount my system onto my gimbal and kind of shoot like that. It was incredibly easy to balance and quick. And in terms of shooting handheld as well, it was a breeze. the video looked really good as well. I was really happy with the look of it. I was able to turn it into my kind of cinematic stuff that I like to go for. Now, I didn't suffer from any kind of distortion or vignetting really at all. 45mm is not really a focal length that I would generally associate with distortion. That's usually something that a wider lens might give you, but I didn't get any here, so that's a good thing. Also, in terms of flaring, I was actually really impressed by how well it was able to cope with that. I was shooting directly into the sun at times, and obviously I got a little bit, I was kind of actually going for a little bit, and you'd expect that with pretty much any lens. But actually, shooting even directly into the sun as a backlight on my subject, I was able to completely minimize flaring, and that was really impressive. Now, something else that I really liked about this lens was the autofocus. Now, it's nothing like super special, it's not incredibly fast or anything like that, but I tell you what it does, and it's exactly what I wanted it to do, and that is it just works. It just works every time. It was so reliable. I never even thought about it. I never even thought to myself about the autofocus because it was just working every time. It would hit its mark, it would stay locked on. If I was tracking or anything like that, the eye autofocus worked perfectly with the A7 III. I tried the animal eye autofocus with my dog. That worked perfectly as well. I wasn't getting loads of hunting, the kind of wasn't getting any of that. It just worked really well. In video, it was working great. Really impressed by that. Now, like I say, it wasn't like the fastest lens I've ever used in terms of autofocus, but it was nice and quick. It was nice and quick and nice and reliable. And that's kind of the main thing, especially a lens this price. That is really great. Another great benefit on the autofocus is that it is super quiet. I couldn't hear anything. And if you're a videographer who likes to have a shotgun mic on the top of the camera, you're going to really appreciate that because you're not going to get the noise of the lens focusing, either the or the kind of clicking that it does. You know what I'm talking about if you've ever had to suffer through that. Now, there's no image stabilization actually in the lens itself. I didn't really feel like that was a bad thing. I didn't miss it at all. Shooting on the A7 III, there's image stabilization in the body. It's got 5-axis image stabilization in body, so I didn't need it at all. That was more than enough. To be honest, I think most lenses under 70mm don't really need it on the Sony bodies because of that in-body stabilization. So that wasn't really a negative for me at all. All the photos I shot were handheld. The video that I shot, a lot of it was on a gimbal because I wanted to kind of use my DJI Ronin M and actually get some nice smooth shots, but I did shoot some handheld as well, and I didn't find it any trouble at all. Now, as you can see, this lens is super small. It's really small and light, actually. It's 160 grams. So it balances really well on the front of those small mirrorless camera bodies, so like the A7 III, the A7R III, or the A6400, or anything like that. It's not super front heavy like some lenses can be in terms of on the camera, you can have a really front heavy system. This kind of gives the whole camera lens system a real kind of compact, almost like a travel setup kind of feel to it, which means that running and gunning, heading out on a whim, or just throwing it in your bag in case you want to take some photos becomes a real possibility. It's really easy to just leave this on your camera body because it's a great all-rounder and it's so small and light that it's just such an easy one to take with you. The actual construction of the lens itself is actually surprisingly nice. It's a metallic build. It's actually probably more in line with the lens you might expect to be a little bit more expensive. And in terms of the actual controls on the lens, it's really just this one manual focus ring. That's pretty much in line with other Samyang E-mount lenses. I think it makes it nice and sleek. I think it doesn't kind of overcomplicate things. And the actual manual focus ring, it feels good. It's not too damp, it's not too loose. If you did want to use it that way, whether that's video or anything else, it's quite a nice option. I mostly shot autofocus, but it's definitely there if you want. It also comes with this lens hood as well. It's pretty small, but it's actually really well made. And that just slots on there, which helps with things like flaring and stuff like that. Ultimately, this lens is just a very good option at this kind of price. I was surprised by how well it performed given the price point. It's just a great all-rounder. The focal length is really useful, especially if you don't have a 35 or a 50. If you're looking to get one of those, this is a really interesting one to be looking at if you're into video, or if you just want a lens that's going to be able to be nice and small and keep your whole system nice and small and compact, so you don't have to worry about kind of big or taking a big camera bag or anything like that. This is a really nice bit of kit, especially at that kind of price point. Now, if you have any questions about the lens or anything else in this video, pop it down in the comments below. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. That always helps out the channel. I really can't explain to you how much I appreciate every single one of you who gives our videos a like. Make sure to subscribe as well, especially if you're new. We've got loads of stuff all the time. We've got tutorials, we've got reviews, loads of stuff. And as always, thanks for watching. Always helps a little bit, but oh my God, literally, how did that even happen? Tell you what though, caught it. This is 45mm, and this is the Samyang E. Oh wow, I don't know what I'm gonna say. It looks super cool.